There's worse places in the world to work. Oh yeah, especially on a day like today. However, you're not here for the weather, are you? Chevrolet. Size these wheels. As you can see, the mould is off. Bolt it back together. I'm good to go. So this has now had 2 layers of gel coat inside the mould. So mould was obviously cleaned up last time. We bolted it back together, obviously put our fixing bolts in through our flanges to locate it. We've then given it a good wax, 2 good thorough coats of wax, because you don't need as much wax when you're doing glass on glass, because obviously the wax doesn't actually soak into it at all, it sits on it much nicer. So she's had 2 coats of wax. And then we've gone in there with about 1.5 kilos of gel coat, which we've pigmented in a light grey because I only had grey. Didn't have any white pigment. It's going to get sprayed anyway. I've got to spray it to colour match the rest of the car, so it doesn't really matter what colour I do it in. Just had to be a contrasting colour because obviously the mould was green. So if you put grey into it, you can see where, you know, where you've been. So a couple of little bits where my gel coat started to dry out. I just need to come in with a bit of sandpaper and just take those tips off there, because otherwise that will be a bubble when you put your glass over it. So she is ready now. 2 coats of gel coat, so she's now ready for glassing. So what I've done is taken it off. It was this way up and it's now this way up, because obviously I want to use gravity. So when we're doing inside of the scoop there, if that's upside down, it's going to be a real pig to actually get the glass to sit in there. So if it's vertical, I can just pour a load of resin in there. That'll sit in that trough quite nicely. I can then poke my mat down into there and get the first part of the scoop in. Same with the main grill. This is obviously the negative of the inside of the grill. Same thing. Splooge a load of resin in there. Get my glass in there. Get all my essentially vertical faces. Vertical as in when it will be on the car. Get all my vertical faces done, which will be this one, and this under tray here. Get them done while it's in this position, so that when I flip it back upside down again, I'm not trying to do this upside down. And then the last thing will be put it back on its head and then do my main flat surfaces. But they should be quite easy. This is the remains of the old bonnet. It's been a few weeks, it's taken up space. I just took a jigsaw to it, so I've just chopped both wings off it, because again I'm keeping the inner arches. So inner arches I'm going to keep. I'm going to cut those out because they're fiberglass and they've been laminated into those wings, so I need to cut those out, keep those. I will then glass those into my bonnet when it's done, and the rest will then get slung in the bin. I've got the metalwork for it. If it's any good for anyone, let me know. If not, I'll probably stick it on eBay. These are obviously the 2 lifting struts. These are obviously different to the 1500. These are for the Mark III. This came off. Whatever fixings these are on the ends. So 2 lifting bars and the actual main bonnet brace that goes on top of the arches, top of the bonnet, top of the arch, plus assorted hardware. It's a bit flaky, but it's still solid. But like I say, it's no good to me. I've got a hydraulic lift in mine, so no good to me. And obviously the strengthening braces we don't need with fiberglass, because all we have to do is just build the fiberglass up thicker if we want to add strength to it, something which you can't do with steel. So when you're doing steel, obviously if you need to put strength into your panel, you need to put either swage lines in it, which is essentially putting a crease into the steel, or you need to brace it on the underside with other steel braces, because, you know, steel panels boom, as we know. So yeah, you need to put swage lines in. With fiberglass, obviously you can't wheel a swage line in because it's resin. You can't just poke shapes in it after it's gone off. But what you can do is put what they call stringers in. So fiberglass resin will soak into pretty much anything. So it doesn't even have to be fiberglass mat you're putting on. You can soak it into cardboard, for example. So if you really wanted to, you could take something like this. 90-degree bit of cardboard, came from packing. I think it came in my radiator box. If you had a smaller version of that, obviously this is about 2 inch by 2 inch, but if you had a much smaller version that's a bit of angled cardboard, you can actually lay this into your mould, soak this in resin and put some glass on it, and the resin will soak into the cardboard, and obviously when it goes off it will go off absolutely rock hard, and you've got a predetermined shape there, a nice 90-degree angle. If you wanted to, you could cut lengths off that and, for example, put them across the bonnet. Or the easier thing to do will be to actually use string. Like I say, you make stringers, so you can put string. You can glue a bit of string into the corner. You can then lay your string across it, say diagonal down to that corner, across, and then diagonally back to that corner, for example. And the same thing, soak it full of resin, cover it in a bit of fiberglass mat, and once it's gone off, that's then going to add a really nice bit of strength and rigidity to your panel. I'm going to wait and see how it is at the end, because it's surprisingly solid already. This mould was only 2 coats of resin, and this is actually surprisingly firm. So with 3 coats, I think the sides are actually going to be not very floppy at all. But, you know, all that, we need to get on with this, get some resin into this, get some glass in this, and start building this up. And dare I say it, we're on the home stretch, aren't we? Mould's done, the new one's in, we've done the gel coat, now we just need to build the resin out into it. And then once it's done, then we can obviously do all the donkey work, all the fun bits if you like, putting the grill in, putting the lights in, etc. Putting some paint in, putting some chrome trim on it, and seeing how it looks, because at this point, who knows, at the moment it's all in here. And it could be good or it could be a disaster, as I keep saying, but we'll find out. It's a nice warm summer's day. It's been a few weeks. We've been carrying on, glassing. And we are now at that point. Oh yes, it is time to get it out of the mould. See where we're at. So I haven't bothered filming any of this really, because there's only so much you can watch someone putting fiberglass into a mould. It's had 3 coats all over, with some extra strengthening strips along this edge, because obviously this is the floppy edge on your Spitfire. Obviously the clips go here, so it gets pulled in anyway, but you know, it's a little bit flippy floppy. But yeah, it's had 3 coats all over. So I'm literally just waiting for this last bit I've put on to dry, and it's probably about half an hour away. I've gone around and cleaned up most of the edges, cut all the fluffy bits off. So the last job to do now will be to go around, take all the bolts out, and then we can get a wedge in here, get these sides off, get this thing out of the mould, and see what it finally looks like. Exciting stuff. Feels like it's been going on forever. If I was to do it non-stop, then I could probably have had it done in, I don't know, a couple of months. If I was doing it full time, you know, all day, every day, I could have done in a couple of months. But of course, I would do it an hour after work, and it's just, you know, it's just not enough. There's a lot of resin. Ta-da! It's out. Came out surprisingly easily, if I do say so myself, with one slight problem, which you may or may not be able to see. Here, and there's a big flat spot right there. I'll try and catch the light on it so you can see it. See that big flat spot? Wasn't there when I made the buck, so why is it there now? Well, it's been upside down, hasn't it? It's been upside down, resting on this scoop, on top of this stack of tyres. And obviously the heat in here at the moment, because, you know, summer, has heated it. All the weight's pushed on the corner of that scoop, and it's pushed itself in there. So what we've done is stuck a bit of wood under it, just to try and push it back out, and before I leave today I'll put a weight on that corner, and then hopefully just with the heat of the day, that'll start to push itself back out. If not, a bit of a heat with a heat gun, we should be able to warm that, make it slightly malleable, and then push it back out again. But like I say, you can't really see it. I can see it because, you know, I'm here. But the rest of it is surprisingly good. There's only a tiny little bit here. We've had a little reaction, but that's fine. Obviously it's going to get painted in the same colour as the car anyway, so it needs to be rubbed back and DA'd and painted, so if you're going to rub it back, you may as well fill all your little niggly bits, right? There's a few other tiny bits you won't be able to see in the paintwork, just some slight imperfections, which I knew were there, just from making the mould, from doing the original buck, which is fine. So all in all, success. Nothing broke, nothing fell off, everything is as it should be. Obviously just need to clean up all the seam lines, we've had plasticine in our seams, go over that with a bit of sandpaper. You can see where I've started doing it here. Just rubbing those seams down just to make them nice and flat, a little skim of filler if we need it, and then obviously the whole thing will then get sprayed over in a high build, which is the same colour as this, the grey high build. DA that back so it's super mirror flat, cut out the grill, cut out the scoop, and then zap it in white, drill, lights, etc, etc, etc. But anyway, that's the boring bit done. That's 6 months of fiberglassing done. So success all round. Now I can do the fun stuff like cutting things out and putting chrome strips and things on. And at some point we'll have to see if it actually fits on the car, because like I say, I haven't even looked. So it should, but it'd be stupid to paint it and then find out it doesn't, right? So I think what I'll do is once we've done all the cutting out and the rubbing back and we get it prepped for paint, I'll bring the car down here, whip the old bonnet and the lights off, drop it on top, yes it fits, or no it doesn't, shit. And then I can paint it knowing it's going to fit. That makes sense, right? Yeah. Right, it's enough for one day. With our little block of wood in there and a slight wet on the corner, that dip is starting to come out quite nicely. That's good. So we've just gone around and started sanding off the mould lines. Obviously you're always going to have a slight line where the two edges of the mould meet. So we started sanding that back. A couple areas are going to need a little bit of filler in, like here, but on the whole it's pretty good. Gone down that one. Like I say, it's getting sprayed to match the car anyway, so doing a little bit of remedial work, filling in here, etc. is no bother, don't mind that at all. But while I get bored of doing the sanding, the next thing I need to do is to sort out the lights. So obviously this panel is going to be our grille. The lights are going to come to about here, which means that gap in the middle needs to be completely cut out, because that's going to have my vertical grill in it, obviously through for the radiator, and I'm going to have two circles cut in here where the headlights are going to protrude through. This will then be painted black and everything else will be white. The bumper is going to be black and that's going to have a silver or chrome strip running along the face of it. So most of it's going to be white, that's going to be black, this is going to have a black mesh inside it, and then a chrome strip on the bumper. Now obviously cutting the holes in for this is a little bit awkward, because how do you make sure both of those headlights line up nicely when you're orientating your holes? So what I've done here is found a paint tin lid that was exactly the same diameter as the headlight, which is 15 centimeters or 6 inches. That's the bit I cut out. And make sure this ring fits snugly over. So this is how the light is going to sit when it's actually inside. You can see we've gone down to the chrome ring, but also we don't want anything to show past that. I want to see the chrome ring, but obviously I don't want to see the fixing screws underneath. I could have had it come to here, but then I won't be able to see the chrome, and I want the chrome. It's going to be quite nice. So we've cut one out. That is a very nice fit. I've gone around it with a sanding wheel on the Dremel, making sure it's an absolute perfect fit. Obviously this is one headlight, they're going to be in pairs, there's going to be 4 headlights in total. That's why I've kept it very thin on this side. So the other light's going to sit here, and what I'm going to do is cut another 3 of these out, which will be fun. Have the 2 lights in their holder, put one over this one, put one over the second one, tape the 2 cardboard templates together or glue them together, take them off as one, and then obviously I'll have a nice cutting template to use on the bumper, and the lights should line up perfectly because obviously we've taken a double template and made it into one. You know what I mean. And then obviously I can offer it up, draw around the inside, cut that out, feed the lights through, and obviously once they're in situ I can then work out where the fixing points for the actual brackets are going to be and attach them on the inside. So this is the light, and obviously this one's going to sit in here somewhere, line up about there. So you can see I've got just enough room to offer up another cardboard template onto this side, stick the two together, pull it off as one. And then the fixing points for these, they've got lots of, there's a couple 90-degree bends here with fixings on them, so hopefully there'll be something there to attach them to. If not, I'll work out some kind of attachment method for the inside. I may even glass them in from the back. I haven't decided yet. Until I sort of cut the holes out, bring it in and get it there, I'm not too sure. Obviously the adjustment knobs for the headlights are on here. Each headlight has two adjusters, obviously one vertical, one horizontal, and two on the other side as well. So that's why I went to the length of buying this. So I've got the bracket with the adjustment on it. And there'll be plenty of room inside that bonnet because it's about, I don't know, 12 inches longer than a standard one. But the main advantage is obviously the shape. Because the original Spitfire bumper, if you look at it in side view, the original Spitfire bumper, if you follow my finger, it comes down like that. So you haven't got a lot of room here for your radiator. Your radiator sits about there, and as you know on a normal Spitfire, the radiator pretty much touches the top of the bonnet. So now I've inherited a lot more height and more forward room. So that's going to be a nice thing. It'll allow my lights to sit in there quite evenly. My radiator is going to be there, my fans and all the rest of it. And there'll be plenty of room. And with the extra height, now we're going to have, you know, probably, I don't know, 6 inches between the bonnet and the top of the engine block. Which means when I cut this out and work out some kind of tubing mechanism for the inside, I can run this back and have this so it feeds fresh air to the carbs. So instead of the horrible air filter cassette thing with a tube on it, I can actually have some nice, you know, basically make the scoop functional, so it's not just an ornamental thing. It will actually serve a purpose. Yeah, so it should all tie together quite nicely. There's lots of tidying up work to do on it yet. As you can see, I've got to trim the bottom valance, make that nice and square, but, you know, it's pretty much there. It's on, and it fits, sort of. So what I do need to do is, it's just fouling, I don't know how well you can see this, it's just fouling on that front plastic grille we've left in, and possibly the front overriders. We might have to trim a little bit off the bottom valance just to run it back, because it is, well, that far back. Not much in the grand scheme of things, and obviously the fact that it's two colours and the perspective on film makes it look ginormous, but believe it or not, it's ½ an inch shorter than the original Spitfire bonnet. I've just measured it, because I had to cut the nose off the GT6 bonnet to do the design. So whilst it looks absolutely huge, it's actually shorter. But I don't hate it. Okay, cool. Next day. So I took a couple snaps of it yesterday. This photo. So I stuck up on the Triumph Facebook group. Overwhelmingly positive feedback, which is good. There's always a few people going, "What have you done? You destroyed Michelotti's dream," all the usual kind of stuff. It looks horrific. I totally get all that, and I'm absolutely fine with negative feedback. I'm not one of these people who's going to get upset about people saying they don't like it. It's a subjective thing, isn't it? Some people like things and some people don't. I'm cool with that. As long as someone's not going, "You're a dick," then I'm fine, because that's, you know, it's personal. Whether I am or not, you know, whatever. But, so yeah, overwhelmingly positive reviews, so that's really good to see. So now we've just got to do some fettling. Obviously the actual piece itself isn't finished at all. The edges need all grinding down flat and trimmed nicely. It needs painting, it needs rubbing down, all that, you know, good stuff. So we're just doing a little bit of remedial work today. So we've got it back in again, off the car. Car looks so naked with nothing on it. Oh. And yes, I know, I really must get rid of these cable ties to my radiator. I know, that's really bad. So that's the beast with no front end on it. Wiring's a bit of a mess. I know, I get it. It looks better from this side though, right? If you come from the carb side, it always looks better from the carb side, I think. So yeah, she looks very sorry without her bonnet on. The hood. Dog. Where you going? Hey, in. So we said yesterday about that slight bulge on the scoop. Obviously we're on the inside of the car now, but there was a slight, I say bulge, it was a depression in the scoop where the mould had been resting on the front of my scoop. What I should have done when I was moulding it, whereas I had it stacked on a set of Goodrich TAs, which I was used for moulding on to make it the right height, which is fine, but of course the problem was the lowest point was the bottom edge of that scoop, which meant that over time, as it heats itself through, every time you lay more glass in and put resin in, it gives off heat. It's an exothermic reaction, which then in turn softens the glass underneath it, and obviously what's happened is the weight of the bonnet pushing down has basically recessed that scoop. It's pushed the scoop up into it, and it wasn't apparent until I took it out of the mould, but you know, hey, whatever. So what we've done now is we've braced a bit of wood across it. We've stuck a 10 kilo kettlebell on it and a 5 kilo roll of extension roll. Heat gun, we've gone around it and just heated it loosely in the areas where it needs to recess, because if you heat fiberglass to get it to a certain temperature, it will start to go soft again. So that's what we've done. We've heated it, we've applied weight to it, that shape has now dropped down. You won't be able to see, but if we look at it from underneath and we look along that line, you can see now that line is actually pretty flat. There's hardly any deformation in that panel at all, which is good. Obviously I can take it out with filler. Like I said before, there's a couple of little niggly bits in there I need to get some filler in anyway before I paint it. If I wasn't going to paint it, I'd be a bit annoyed. If I was trying to finish it in its gel coat layer and have the gel coat pigmented to be the same colour as the paint, then I'd be a bit annoyed, because obviously you don't want to put filler on top of that, it's your final layer. But because I use grey gel coat, I was always going to have to paint it to match the car anyway. So it doesn't, if I've got to do a little bit of filling, it doesn't matter, it's going to get painted anyway, it's no, you know, it's no bother. So what we've done, we've heated that, so that is now dropping down. We've also put a couple of stringers in, which is this sort of fabric wrapped cord stuff. We use it for sewing, you use it for putting seams in, or like hems in when you're sewing stuff. You'd wrap around it and stitch down and it'll give you a nice nice solid edge. Use it for making curtains and stuff like that. But it's also quite handy for this application because it's very spongy, it soaks up resin, and all we do is just tack it in place with a bit of super glue. Doesn't matter what shape it is, that makes no difference whatsoever. Put a little bit of tissue mat over it, and then soak it in resin. And all we're doing there is adding, essentially like you'd add a swage line to a metal panel, that we're doing exactly the same thing. We're putting in a shape which is going to give it strength. Like in your arches, you've got a lot of strength in your arch because you've got this tight turn, and that shape adds a lot of strength. Obviously where you've got a big flat section here, this is the reason that bit got pushed back up, because it's completely flat. It's like having a flat side on your van, like on the old Chevy van. You know, the panels boom. If you push that panel, boom, 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 it booms. And this is why they put those swage lines in. On modern vans, you know, you have the rectangular panels in the side for that very reason, to stop the panel boom. And obviously panel boom in a fiberglass panel means it can deform. So all we're doing, a couple stringers in, soak it in resin, that becomes its own angle essentially, and then we'll give that area a lot more strength. And what I'll probably do, once this has gone off, is I'll stick another one in horizontally in front of the scoop, just to take care of that, and then we should be on to a winner. Also, you can see we've cut two locating holes out there. Unfortunately, it didn't quite fit perfectly. Okay, it went back and it stopped about 3 inches shy of the scuttle tray up there, the windscreen, because the overriders touched that. Now I knew when I started that obviously I was using a Mark III bonnet and putting it onto a 1500, and therefore there was going to be some difference. The Mark III doesn't have the same lifting mechanism at the front of the bonnet that the 1500 does. It doesn't have those same sticky out overrider bits, I believe. So it was always a chance moulding on top of that shape that it was going to fit, and as it turns out it didn't. So I have to cut a little slot out. It's most of the way there now. I do need to open those slots out a little bit more, and then eventually it will get hinged down here. This is obviously the bottom, it's upside down. It will get a hinge across there which will go into the overrider. So the only modification I'll be doing to the existing chassis, or the overrider, zoom, will be drilling a couple holes in the bottom just to put a a hinge and put a couple of rivets through, and it'll just be a standard like door hinge. It doesn't need to be anything special. It'll be something like a couple of these. Because we've got the gas struts on the bonnet anyway, so there's no sort of weight to it. You know, when the bonnet is closed, the gas struts lie flat, so they're not sort of pushing up into it or anything like that, or pushing against the hinges. They're pushing it back towards the windscreen. And when the bonnet comes up, obviously the gas struts are holding most of the weight, so there isn't a lot of weight in the bottom corner on the hinge. So a couple of hinges in the bottom, that should take care of the lifting mechanism. Obviously the clips on the side are in exactly the same place as they were. So they will just get cut out, and I've obviously got the clips, so they'll clip in exactly the same place. And then all I need to do is just add some foam to the sides here, just to build those out a bit, because at the moment they're, you know, they move in and out when they're lined up on the car. So we'll add some block foam onto there, which means obviously when we do the clips up and pull them nice and tight, it will be foam inside, it will compress, it will stop any bounce in the bonnet, which they, you know, they all do, so I'm led to believe. And that should be pretty much the fitment side of it all taken care of. And obviously I need to then start doing the remedial work, cutting the grill out, putting the lights in, that kind of thing. But yeah, for a first fit yesterday, I was really happy, really happy. I've been flapping for ages, not knowing whether it was going to fit at all. I was hoping it would. It was like the angle here along the scuttle tray and this sort of thing, and this length here, and I was like, oh, you know, I really should have test fit this bonnet on my car before I started moulding it, but I just couldn't bring myself to pull all the lights and everything out and take everything off the front. Just laziness on my part. I thought it'll probably be fine. I measured it and it seemed about right, and as it turns out, it is right. So the Mark III bonnet will fit a Spit 1500, as long as you remove the lower light clusters, because obviously they're unique to the 1500, and the overriders at the front where the hinge for the lifting mechanism goes, that will foul. But apart from that, you're good. Onwards. Back on the tyres, but with wooden blocks, so the scoop ain't touching. Got to be this way round, so I had to trim this out, which is obviously the scuttle edge, which does fit. Trimmed out the air vent. That was just going to be like a detail to add some panel strength to it, but actually it makes more sense to have it as a functional air vent, because obviously air is going to come in through the front, through the scoop, over the top of the engine, and then it's going to get driven up here over the windscreen. So if you're going to have something as a vent, you may as well have a functional vent, right? So that's being glassed in, obviously clamped in place first of all, a bit of glass, because otherwise this mesh just wants to go and jump up in the air. So that will get glassed in and finished tomorrow. And then figuring out what we're going to do with the headlights down there, because the headlights are going to fit, that's fine, but obviously there needs to be a way of fixing them in. So one option is to make a block of wood that's going to sit about there, which spaces it off the right distance away from the glass panel. Or the other option we were just saying would be to utilise the actual holes in the corner of the light fixings and then just run bolts through from the front. So a countersink bolt coming through the front, through those, nut on the back, washer, and a second nut on that. That way they're essentially adjustable. The lights are obviously adjustable anyway, they've got the little twisty adjusters on them. But that way it means you can get the lights nice and flush. The only problem with that, of course, is that you have a countersink bolt on the front, but because I've got some filling and remedial work to do on it anyway, I may as well just skim over those with filler before I paint it black. They're never going to come out again, so, you know, what's the point? May as well leave them in there. So that'll be the next job tomorrow, or whenever we to cut these things out. Got the little cardboard templates made for the light bezels already, so that gives me my cut lines to transfer to there, which I can then transfer into a marker pen, and somehow try and cut out a perfect circle, which will be amusing, but I'll get there. It's coming along. Guess who's having itchy arms tonight? This guy. Right, so we've cut out our panel there. Got our grille put in from the front. Looks alright. It is only a grille. And we put our main cuts for our lights in. I've cut them under. Black ring is the outside edge. And my original plan was to mount the lights up to the chrome ring. This one is obviously without chrome ring, but decided it's better if I just put the glass through. The chrome isn't really in that good condition, so, and I don't really want the lights to be that visible behind the grille, and if I put chrome on them then you're going to see them. I just want them to sort of, you can be able to see the lights when you look at it directly from the front but not from the sides. So taking the chrome ring off one, I've just used this one as a template. You can see what condition the backs of them are in. They're absolutely hanging, and you can obviously see that through the front as well. But you're not going to notice it when it's in the car. So just that left hand one is the one I've cut out so far. And that it's a super snug fit. Pop. All we've done, I've cut the main shape out with a fane saw, which isn't easy with a square blade. Fane saw being one of these little chaps. Just putting the corner in and working it around. It's very noisy, very dusty. And then we're just coming back over it with a Dremel with a sanding wheel and just keep going around the inside basically until the light falls in, and that's it. And then obviously I've got to do the other three as well, but I just can't bring myself to do them now. I'm covered in fiberglass dust. It's really hot today and I just can't be doing with it. And then once all four are in and I can get them in situ, obviously then the 4 holes in the steel mount I can then mark, drill them through from this side, pass the bolts through from the front, nip them all down with washers and nuts, and then obviously once the brackets are in I can put the actual bulb holders back in with the harnesses, and that is the lights done. Once that's done I can then come in, measure out the grille for the front, cut that out. I'm going to use the same mesh I've used there, that's sort of what I call like a barbecue mesh, to sit in behind, which will be the main part of the mesh to stop any leaves and stuff coming through. And then obviously we're going to have our vertical slatted grille over the front. The slats are going to be every ½ inch or so there's going to be quite a lot of teeth in this grille. I haven't decided how I'm doing that yet. I've tossed a few ideas around. Most of them are either too expensive or too time consuming, like cutting individual strips of plastic and actually gluing them in there. I haven't decided yet, or I might go and see if I can find a vent or something, something with vertical teeth in it about the right distance that I can buy a load of them, cut them up, and that vent will then run the entire width. I'm going to run them over the lights as well. It won't affect the beam pattern of the lights because they're going to be right in front of it, so it will have vertical teeth all the way across the grille and the lights, and then obviously from the front it will just look like a mouthful of evil black teeth. That's the plan anyway. But like I say, I've got to find a way of doing it. The cheapest way would be to get a sheet of black plastic, score it with a Stanley knife, snap them off individually, line and measure them all up, and then glue them into the front. But that's going to take, I've worked it out, it needs 96 individual teeth. And I ain't cutting out 96 pieces of plastic, gluing them in place. It will just be an absolute ball ache. So I'll go to the hardware shop and see if I can find some kind of vent covering, like the thing you use for covering external vents, you know, with the louvers on them that are adjustable. And if I can adjust them to the 90-degree level and then sort of tack them in place with the glue, get a load of them and put them all side by side, at least then all the vertical teeth will all be in a uniform distance from each other, if you know what I mean. Rather than trying to line it up by eye, it would just be a nightmare. I don't need that in my life. This is already going on longer than I thought it was going to, but as all good projects do. We've got some hinges for the front as well. Picked a couple of these up. Steel plate hinges. These will be absolutely fine. These will get glassed in down here, whichever way around they go, that way around I think. They'll be glassed in there. These are obviously the holes for the overriders, and then I'll have a piece of angle plate coming off the overrider with some riv nuts in it. That will get bolted to it, and that will give you your pivot point for your bonnet. As long as it pivots, oh no, it'll be that way around, won't it? It'll pivot here. Because as long as it pivots here on that edge, the bonnet won't foul. It will only ever move away from the car. If you try and pivot it anywhere up here, as it rocks forward, this rocks back and that's going to hit your overrider. It's a bit weird to explain, but I'm sure you know what I mean. If you make your pivot point as far forward and as far down as you can, the whole thing will just lift away from the car. As soon as you start bringing that pivot point back or up, it then becomes almost like a seesaw. And that just becomes, you know, again, same thing, more of a ball ache than I need. And then once that's all measured up, I can then basically put my old bonnet back on the car, go back to driving the car again, because it's nice and sunny, although it's meant to rain soon. We've had 3 weeks of sunshine, it's been lovely. Put put the bonnet back on the car, put my lights and my grille back in, drive it around again, because I'm missing driving the car, and then I can work on that in the meantime, putting all the lights in, getting it all cut in, sprayed and all the rest of it. And then once it's ready, I know that everything's going to fit, I can simply take the old one off, put the new one on, and we should be good to go. That's the plan anyway. Nothing else is going to foul. I've already checked all that. There's loads of room for the lights, the radiator, all that good stuff. There's a lot more room in there, which is perfect. So I think we'll leave it there for the time being. That's probably enough for one video. I think we're up to probably half an hour or so now. So yeah, I'll leave it there. And next time we come back, again, we'll be doing things like the grille, putting the lights in, getting it cut back, trimmed, painted, and all that kind of stuff, and work out where our lifters are going to go, the hydraulic lifters. That's going to be a bit of a ball ache, because in an ideal world you want to compress them, keep them compressed, bolt them in place, pivot them up, see where they touch the bonnet, mark it, and then obviously I can glass a little ring in for the lifting strut to go to. But of course, they're gas struts. As soon as you compress them, they go back out to their full length again, and you can't measure them from their full length. I think what I'll have to do is compress them, measure them, and then make a piece of wood the same length and use that. I don't know, we'll get there. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching this far. I do appreciate it. It's going on a bit, I know, but I'm hoping that, you know, next one hopefully be the last one maybe, and then it will be done driving, and I think it will look pretty cool. I got a good feeling about this one. I wasn't so sure at first. I wasn't so sure about the scale, how it would look next to the car, but now I've seen it on complete and walked around it, I'm happy that it does actually suit it and it looks quite cool. So, my opinion anyway, you might not like it, whatever, don't care. But, you know, thanks for watching, I do appreciate it. I'll see you all next time.